everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. I'm very excited to talk to Candice Covington, the author of this book, Essential Oils and Spiritual Practice, Working with Chakras, Divine Archetypes, and the Five Great Elements. So welcome, Candice.
Glad to be here.
So I understand that you actually work at the Chopra Centers. Tell me a little bit about, you're the primary aromatherapist. So tell me a little bit about what that work is all about.
Well, I feel so blessed to be able to work with aromatherapy through the lens of the sacred. So instead of focusing on the way that essential oils affect our physical body, I teach people how to use essential oils as a spiritual vehicle. So mostly through the lens of the five great elements, which is their creation story, basically, on how things come into being. And so that is just basically the building blocks of the universe, according to Vedic thought. So when you break down a system to that deep primal root, you're able to affect change on literally the most basic level. So a lot of it is for working with karma, and then because this is such a vast topic, I sometimes have to get reorganized and find the
and just let's actually go a little, let's reverse a little bit for folks who are not familiar with the Vedic philosophy. So there's five elements. So there's earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And ether and air are different, which is a little bit confusing to me. First of all, so these are the five elements that everything on this physical plane of reality is made up of these five things. Is that right? So that's the idea. So when Earth was created, it was created. So what's the creation story according to the Vedic philosophy?
So everything comes from ether. And a lot of times in the metaphysical community, people hear it called Akasha, because Akasha is literally Sanskrit for ether. So it's that place of pure potentiality. That's where matter and energy basically lie in a dormant state. So it's literally anything you can ever think of, past, present, or future, you are able to get from that realm of creation. And so what happens is air, that is a slightly denser element. And that's where sort of the flight of fancy thoughts coming in. That's what we refer to as prana or chi in most traditions. And what happens is when you get this great expanse, and it finally, the vibration through like starting to feel the potentiality in your own electrical system, you start to be able to manifest. And so what happens is then concepts get distilled a little bit more. And the one, according to Vedic thought below that, is fire, and that's ruled by the mental body. And that's when you start to have an intellectual understanding of a cosmic principle that's so great that it's all of a sudden an aha. You can learn that through traditional study, or it can be just our own epiphanies that come from being in deep relationship with mystery. And so that's when you start to digest things on the mental plane. And then the one below that is water, which is what they refer to as the pregnant womb. So they consider that a creative element, like the last place when you're putting the last little bits of information together before you decide to birth into the world. And then the earth element is where we see things in solidity. So like the manifestation of you creating your show or me writing my book is the end product of us working through all of those steps until it's solid enough that we're able to literally create it, birth it, and have it be a static
So like this physical manifestation started with, so you're saying everything in creation, whether it's a book, you, me, this glass, everything in creation started in the ether, then came as a thought, then came into eventually materializing in a physical form. And so everything is made up of these five elements, which then you say actually make up dosha. So tell folks what a dosha is, since I wasn't familiar. I was familiar with dosha, but I didn't understand the how doshas and the five elements relate to each other.
That's a great question. So, according to Vedic thought, a dosha is basically your spiritual, physical makeup. So, it's
Mm,
like the sum total of what you are on all of your levels.
mm-hmm,
It addresses emotion, mental, physical, all of that. And so, two elements create a dosha. So,
mm,
for example, if a kapha is a combination of earth and water, so
mm,
within that, the behavioral pattern of that person are going to reflect the constitutional traits of both water and earth, whereas a pitta is fire and water. And they're
mm,
going to express the behavioral traits of both water and fire, and also how those two elements play in conjunction.
mm-hmm,
And Avada is a combination of air and ether. And they're the most
mm,
sort of ethereal, esoteric incarnation on earth. Like a lot of our gurus and like people who have, really deep spiritual orientation, those are often the elements that they evolve from. And so that's an interplay of those two. And so if you end up reading my book, I have a really big write-ups because it's so hard to take this stuff in a snap,
mm-hmm,
where you read what the elemental behaviors are on all different levels,
mm-hmm,
both in the positive and the negative, because according to Vedic thought, everything born into duality has a flip side,
mm-hmm.
sort of like a positive and a shadow. And why it's so important for self study is because if you can basically familiarize yourself with the different behavioral traits of the different elements, you
Mm-hmm.
can recognize when you have a need. You can work with that with, to create that in yourself. You can use the corresponding essential oil to build that. Or even if you see an aspect that you feel that's out of balance, and no matter how, one of the main principles they teach is that you can have the best intention and like really try your hardest, but they have something called samskaras, which means that they're almost like energetic imprints in our cellular body that our mental body is not strong enough to get to alone. And that's why traditional practices have so many, mantras, yantras, meditation, yoga, and all of these things that are help us to get into these deeper, places in ourselves. And this is just one more methodology to help you address this so you feel empowered to create changes that basically behoove you on all realms of your existence.
Okay, so I'm gonna point folks to um, ether, for example, is that's one of mine. I'm a Vata, so I have ether and air as my two primary. My dosha has is so what I think you're saying is the dosha is kind of like what are the raw ingredients that you have most of, and so I actually took your assessment and I was mostly let's see, where was the assessment? I think I was mostly yeah, ether, air, and fire. And then, like, very little. I had like three of ether, four of air, three of fire. So I don't have a lot of water at all. But if I actually go into the ether, you explain the key traits of someone who has ether. So expansion, diffusion, timelessness, limitlessness. So there's a description here in your book about the various elemental makeups that you have of a dosha, and then you have the gifts. So opening up to your spiritual gifts, such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, or being a clear channel, of which you have a whole bunch of other things that I won't read. But then you also have the shadow side that you're referring to. So too little ether feel it means that you're feeling contracted and immutable, lacking spiritual connection and ability to transcend the physical world, difficulty recognizing and expressing your own truth. So, is this, generally speaking, if I have this dosha, how I know if I'm out of balance? So, let's say that I am ether, and or I'm vata, and I'm out of balance. Is the shadow issues giving me a sense of how my dosha is out of balance, or is it just anyone walking on Earth? This is their like because they're gonna have to have some of these elements in them, or is it both?
Yes, and that's what the best thing about like these deep systems is it's frequently yes and. So the thing is, you're absolutely right. Since we're all made out of the five elements, we all have them operating to a certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
So you can like say like like, but also what you're saying is that if you have a born a certain dosha type,
Hmm.
that's the propensity of what you could call your operating system. That is
Okay.
your unconscious way that you move through the world.
Okay.
And so it's sort of like what they refer to as causation patterns. And so what happens is that they're calcified energy tracks that create basically unconscious behavior patterns. And so unless you deeply or inner, you know, make a choice to become acquainted with that part of your nature, it's going to feel so natural. If it's your dosha, you might take it for granted, for example. Because
Mm.
I would guess very much, just seeing the line of work you're in and, hearing about your practice, it's not surprising to me at all that you're an ether air,
Hmm.
because you gravitated towards that. It also doesn't surprise me that you had fire, because it wasn't just enough for you to be a hermit in a mountainside. You had to
Hmm.
figure out how to take that esoteric spiritual knowledge and then find some way to share it. And so that's
Mm.
a big push of the fire. Is
Mm.
there's a degree of benevolence with that, where you want to take acquisition of understanding of principles
Hmm.
and be able to share it with the larger world. I mean, even your ability to ask clarifying questions and being able to really listen like that
Hmm.
is a sign of the coupling of your nature of fire mixed with the ether and the air.
Hmm.
So,
So these elements then, so as I understand it, these elements then form in a certain compositional pattern that then creates a dosha that then can actually be described as kind of like who CJ is as a spiritual being. And as I understand, what I loved in the very beginning, you were talking about that every single thing, not just CJ, but this book, this glass that we talked about, the chairs behind you, everything has a vibrational energy and was created with these same five elements and created with certain doshas. And I thought that was a fascinating thing. Tell me a little bit about. So let's actually go. I'm sorry. Let's go back to ether or air, because I think that's one of yours too, right? So, so let's actually go into someone that maybe the two of us share. So air. So let's say that air, too little air. Okay, I've had this. So this is a shadow issue of too little air. Constricted heart center leading to a tendency to hold grudges or inability to give or receive love, resulting in a dismal view of life. Or too much air disturbs the mind, causing difficult concentrating, thinking things through, or sitting for meditation. So, like, yes, double those. I mean, yes, these are things that feel familiar to me. So, let's say that I'm about to take on a big work project and I'm feeling kind of distracted.
mm,
So, how would I say, okay, that's my dosha? How would I take that and then construct the essential oils that would be appropriate for harmonizing this particular? Would it be called dosha imbalance, or what would it be called?
I personally like to break it down. You could go through it with dosha, but that means that you're working with two elements simultaneously.
Mm,
So just for the ease of precision,
yeah.
personally like to choose a specific element.
Okay. So let's say air.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And what's so fascinating about elements is almost everybody, I would say, nowadays familiar with the concept of chakras,
Hmm.
but the elements create the chakras. And the reason why air opens up the heart center is it literally is the root energy that creates the heart chakra.
Mm,
Yeah. And so a great way to visualize that is the element is the primal root that's kind of tucked more out of sight. It's underground, it's, chthonic. And then the chakra is the blossom or the manifestation that we see more outwardly in the world.
ah,
So
okay.
one of the greatest things about working with an element is you're getting right to the core of something.
Mm,
And so, for example, my favorite essential oils for working with air would be juniper,
mm-hmm,
petitgrain, and marjoram.
mm.
And you can use those singularly, or you can make a synergetic blend, and you can go ahead and air resides literally in the cave of the heart, or your energetic heart, where your chakra would be right here in the center of
So is
your.
it like right here in your center of your heart? So right.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of like your high heart. Yeah, like your spiritual heart.
Yeah, so this is actually the middle of my chest or the nipple line, so it would be kind of right around here.
Yes.
Okay, okay, got it. So I would actually, that's where and just for fun, just so people understand what you talked about, who are not familiar with chakra.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's the base. I'm going to go here, right? This is kind of your root chakra, first chakra, and that is Earth, right? Is
Yes.
this the right space?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's space over here, and then there's the second chakra, which is would be water.
Perfect.
Okay, emotion, and then the third chakra would be the will. So right around here, the solar plexus, right around my
Yeah.
ribs.
Yeah. Just yeah. Right. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then the fourth chakra is the one that we were talking about, the high heart,
Mm-hmm.
and that's equivalent to earth, the earth element, the water element, the uh, uh, fire, um, air, and
Mm-hmm.
then ether is my throat.
Perfect.
Okay, and then so those are the five elements. And what's interesting is like the third eye, as I read in your book, is kind of like everything.
Yeah. All of the elements combined.
Okay, and is that also the seventh chakra? Your crown chakra is all elements combined too?
It's above the elements.
Above the elements.
Yeah,
Okay, got it.
yes. And so what's so fascinating is it's one of those concepts that you talk about and you have to study and think about, but it is literally vibrates out of human perception.
Hmm.
Like everything up to your sixth. I mean, we're literally hardwired in human incarnation to be able to perceive and work with it.
Hmm.
And then the way the ancients spoke about it is that unless you really come in relationship with your lower sixth, it's impossible to break open to the crown. And that is
Mm,
that spaciousness that comes from genuine enlightenment. It doesn't
mm,
mean we don't get it in flashes and bits, but unless you're genuinely an enlightened being, you don't stay in that space. But that
mm,
doesn't mean we shouldn't do all practices to work towards it, you know.
right.
And but that one's just such a fascinating one for me to
Yeah.
meditate or think about or study because you're using clumsy tools to get you as close as you can until that there is just honestly a bit of grace that allows you to open to that energy.
Right. And as I read in your book, you said there are a lot of different practices. The one that I'm familiar with um, uh, is the Shaivite tradition, which is about that your Kundalini kind of in this the sacral area kind of lights, awakens, and then
Mm-hmm.
the energy goes up and through your Sushumna or center channel, and then it's going through and breaking up, contractions in the root, contractions in so it's breaking up these contractions and which are kriyas or contractions, and then I don't know if they're the same as samskara or not, or what you were describing as samskara or not, but weren't you talking about samskara?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, no, those are slightly different.
Oh, they
Like,
are okay.
yeah, yeah. So samskaras are probably not as fun as kriyas, to tell you the truth. It's basically just that just means latent memories,
Okay.
that your bodies that you can't find consciously, and so. Probably a better
Oh.
westernized word for that would be archetypes. So what you have is a motivating force that is literally like I always think of it as like strings pulling our cute little human bodies like puppets, like where we'll go into a
Oh.
behavioral pattern, but we can't consciously tell you why. And it's so interesting. It could be literally brought in if you from past lives, which I happen to believe into.
Mm-hmm.
So you're having something that's causing you to react to situations, even though maybe there's not anything in your like waking temporal life that you can attribute to why that
Right.
is your gut reaction. Or
Right.
it can even be things left over conditioning from relationships, everything from societal, to family, to romantic or friendships. So basically, it's anything that gets sort of pressed into our the I don't know how to say it, but like my teacher always said, pressed into the clay of our being. And so what
Yeah,
happens?
you called them imprint in your book, and I always think of
Yeah,
like a little duckling coming out and seeing like anything and like you're my mommy. It's like that's the first thing that they see, and that's their first association with something. In that case, it's like their mom. So
hmm
these are imprints then that they have. Who knows why they have them, but there's this
right.
kind of
hmm
um, pattern inside of me that is kind of driving me in an unconscious way. Okay,
Perfect.
got it. Okay, so so we talked about just because we've covered a lot. We've talked about the five elements. They relate to doshas, which then create like a spiritual kind of fingerprint, so to speak, and then how you would use this is you would be looking at the vibration of particular aroma essence.
hmm
So like a plant essence that would actually work in a way that works with the vibrational frequency that that person needs. So
hmm
and that we talked about in addition to that there are chakras where so tell me against the chakra connection. So the chakra is that each of these chakras also have kind of a connection to each of these elements. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's relevant because why? Sorry, I just got lost. So let's say that let's go to the one that we were talking about, air. So I'm made up of air, pretty much air, fire, and ether. So
hmm
this is CJ. This is her fingerprint. I have chakras. And what does this say about my heart chakra in this particular case? How is the chakra relevant to this whole story?
Your incarnation pattern, you literally process and perceive life through your heart. And so the thing is that what's so fascinating about heart, where it's not necessarily in the Vedic tradition, the emotional base, which happens to be the second or the water one.
Mm-hmm.
But what's so fascinating is that literally it's like what you would call like higher love, where it's not like maybe grounded in maybe romantic affection, which would come from the second. This is like veneration of the divine, or what you would feel towards,
Like devotional love towards
yes,
Krishna, like something like that.
yeah, or even nature, or the love that you can have for humanity. That doesn't mean necessarily I want to be in a romantic relationship with you. It's
Right.
that type of love. So
Ah, okay.
yeah.
So that's how, so if I know that I'm Pitta Vata, it's the thing that you're talking about. It's like having this higher love. I don't know how the sixth chakra gets connected, but then I also heard the fire, which is about like expressing and making that happen. And where the throat chakra, how does that fit into the whole spiritual fingerprint?
Well, that one, ether creates that one. And basically, that's tapping into all of sort of your deep spiritual gifts. That's where, like, being clairaudient, clairvoyant, like, so that deep intuition that's outside of linear knowledge. So it's knowing beyond the mind, basically.
Ah, okay. So this is how CJ shows up. This is how someone behaves. If I were to, this is, I think, as I understand you correctly, in terms of what you would see someone behaviorally, externally manifesting through their behavior and actions. That's
hmm
how I would show up. And it shows up through our chakras.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. For example, I have a large water component in
Mm-hmm.
my incarnation pattern.
Uh-huh.
So my intuition literally comes through dreams, because the second chakra
Oh,
rules the collective unconsciousness. And so the way I receive information is, honestly, I have to be asleep, and so
wow. Yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So it's like more of my friends tend to evolve from ether and air. So they have more of that being awake, spontaneous knowing of things from an intuitive place.
Wait.
I'm not saying I'm not a degree of intuitive, but that's not my gift. Where the divine speaks to me is literally through dreams. And
And
so,
feelings too, because that's like an emotional. Oh, that's interesting. So it kind of gives a sense of
Mhm.
how that person, in your case, it's because it's ether. You said it's ether and water or air and water.
yeah, I am I'm an ether, air, water person. So where you're
Okay.
ether, air, fire.
Right.
I'm an ether, air, water. But whereas you naturally have that fire, like I can be super shy to the point of hiding because I don't have like that fiery element.
Right.
So I love the creative process, which is my dominant makeup.
Yeah.
But I have to anoint myself specifically with oils that are made to tonify my fire element or my third chakra, or I would hide away, in the woods, and not go out into the world. And so that one's like one that I have to consciously work with all the time to help.
Well, and actually, just as a contrast, so one of the hardest things that I have is staying still and being still and just floating around in the space of voidness and nothingness. I feel very uncomfortable doing that. Ever feeling any feelings like sadness or, shame, guilt, like I just kind of run away and have all sorts of compensatory strategies to deal with those things. So it's kind of the flip side of that whole dynamic. I see. Okay. So you had talked about for you to go and present and stuff, you need to actually activate fire, let's say. And like for me, maybe one of the things that is to be still, which is one of what my teacher, my guru has asked me to do, is really hard because it's antithetical to my spiritual nature.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that this is my affliction is trying to have like the beautiful water and earth element that you have. So how would one lean into that? So my teacher said, CJ, please be still. And I was like, I can't. So what would I do with what would I do with these essential oils to bring about that stillness?
This one is I don't think gets the credit that it deserves because of the 60s, but patchouli is a fascinating oil. Literally what its job is that it collects your energy. So, you have all of this energy and thought naturally because you come from an active fire element. Patchouli literally takes your energy and closes into your aura and brings it down and grounds it into the earth. And so it has the ability to self encapsulate yourself. And so it also, not in a dulling and numbing way, but to a degree, it keeps you more unto yourself where you're not hyperstimulated in environments. And especially like during maybe your meditation or like when you're working on a project, it allows you to have an internal view versus an external.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe it's because of the really bad smell. Everyone is scared away from me.
You have to get a great quality. Like, no, if they're done really well, oh, it's gorgeous. Actually, it's like
Really?
oh
Okay.
yeah, it's reminds me of petrichor, literally. So, which means what Earth smells like after a first rain. So it has all that richness of
Mm,
sort of vegetal notes underneath it, but it
mm,
smells like rich soil.
mm.
And so it has to be a real essential oil, that's really distilled from the patchouli plant and not a perfume oil. But if
Ah,
that makes a big difference. And if that one's not your cup of tea, vetiver, that one is deeply grounding. Deeply
mm.
grounding. That will come, and that one is so exotic and fascinating smelling. I think most people like that one. And another one that's pretty amazing is spikenard.
Okay, you're gonna have to spell these things, but I'll look in your book. So let's say that actually, let's go and talk about like the practical application of this. The patchouli oil is something that brings in the water. Is it a water element is bringing in? What is it
That
that's?
primarily for earth. So there is still even a degree of movement in water, but whereas
Um,
literally solid. And so that'll take your corporeal form and it'll help it ground into that deep, deep Mother Earth energy, which really allows for that deep, deep quietness.
okay, got it. So given my primary goal right now, which is stillness, it would
Mhm.
be taking patchouli oil. And tell me about patchouli oil, because so as I understand it, from reading your book, that everything has a vibration. So I'm CJ, I have my own spiritual vibration, right? And it's not necessarily, when I did the survey, I have like one in Earth. out of like one out of like, I don't know, 20 points in earth. So I don't have a lot of earth in me. And so patchouli, I assume, has earth vibration. And how do we know that patchouli has earth vibration? Um, how would I know, aside from reading your book, of course, we could read your book, Essential Oils, and in spiritual practice and find out which ones, but how would I know if there's some scent I'm gravitated to? I'm like, why am I gravitated towards that? And I can kind of figure out how. What about patchouli makes it earth?
Literally the way it incarnated, it's his vibrational form. So other than that, if you like, say for example, want to work with an oil, like say you can't find in my book or somebody else's book, and you want to get to know what element it is,
Hmm.
you just have to go back to root texts. Ayurveda. I mean, that's always my go-to. And if you like read in any of these old traditional holistic health systems that were plant-based, because what's what they base everything on, is it will break down for you basically what elements the plants are. But if they don't tell you what it is, it's like everything. Like for example, earth is has what would be considered like a sweet taste,
Mm.
and even the fat, and so, and there's a bit of viscousness. So just get your hands on as many ancient manuscripts as you can find, and just
So like I know like patchouli has kind of a sweet note to it when you smell it. It's like sweet, and
mhm.
it actually does have kind of a pungent smell, doesn't it? Or maybe I've just gotten bad patchouli. Does good like if you get the good high quality essential oil of patchouli, is it just purely a sweet note?
No, and honestly, it smells like soil after a first rain. So
Okay.
there's that touch of sweetness to it, but it's really rich and round. Actually, I find it incredibly seductive,
Hmm.
and it would be considered earth seed of water, is how you would phrase that. And
Hmm.
one of the beautiful side effects of that is that it actually opens one to one's own sensual nature. I
Mm.
mean, it's actually an aphrodisiac as well. So
Well,
yeah.
those are three great things. Essential nature, aphrodisiac, those are pretty good things. Okay, and then grounding, of course. So then this is how I would look at the essential oils. I can look at your book and then know, okay, here's what's going on with me. I'm having a hard time being still. Oh, what's that related to? Well, it's related to earth. Okay, what's the essential oil that I would need more of? And then it would be patchouli. And then let's follow that down to the end. So then I have, you talk in your book several different methods. So I could actually, now let's say that patchouli is my way. And so I can do, put it into my body in a targeted area. So it's called personal anointing. I
Mhm.
could actually apply the essential oil to an object. So let's say this necklace that I have near my heart. So I could spray this on a necklace or something to amplify the energy.
Mhm.
Um, I can massage the oil with some essential oil with some blend of base oil in a targeted area. So would I do that around my first chakra, or what would I like? Where would it be, or does it matter?
Oh, yeah. No, it totally matters. And actually, what's fun is each element has what they call it yantra, which is basically just sacred geometry.
Hmm.
So for my root chakra, what I would do is, just make your little blend and then go down as far as you can on your sacrum towards your coccyx,
Hmm.
and literally trace this.
A rectangle. So you
There.
talk in your book, you actually in the very beginning you talk about the sacred shapes,
Yeah, yeah.
and so for Earth it's a triangle. So I don't know if people can see a rectangle. So I would trace this rectangle. Think of the color. Is this yellow?
Yeah, yeah. So Earth is a yellow matte square,
Okay.
and then I also have the mantra listed in there. And so what you can do is that one happens to be LAM or LAM.
Plum.
But if you like
Yeah.
to work with sound, you can
Right.
just say, aloud or in your mind, visualize the color,
Right.
use the oil, and trace it on your body. And most people will literally feel an energetic shift where you kind of click into it. And so
Ah.
people have a strong sense of when that is activated. And a really fun, easy thing to do is if you don't know what to balance, just close your eyes, take your hands and put them over, and then ask for the element that you need to work with, and then wait for color to arise behind in this, basically in your third eye. So tell me when a color presents.
Okay. I did this earlier today, and you had one where you like close off your ears. I can't do that now, but yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, if you like put a little bit of like pressure on your eyelid, they call this a Yoni Mudra. You can just go like that, and
Yeah, it's like a yellow orange. It's actually very similar to that color.
yeah. So a yellow orange is actually earth and water because, well, actually, truthfully, what that one is for you is the yellow is, okay, my question for you is your yellow bright like the sun, or is it sort of a dull matte yellow?
More of a dull matte yellow.
Okay, so that means that your body wants to bring in literal earth energy, but where the orange comes from, which is fascinating, that's the color that's associated with the second chakra.
Hmm.
So for you, it is an earth and water. It's earth and the second chakra. So even though water produces the second chakra, you wouldn't use the essential oils that are correlated with the water. Your body is craving more of the energy that has to do with the second chakra. So you would use oils that vibrate there, which would be like pink pepper seed or blood orange or even vanilla.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So would I use that with patchouli or instead of patchouli?
Well, since you got two colors, you could yeah, you could either, mix it together because it would smell amazing, or you could keep the patchouli and apply that to your
Root chakra.
yeah, and then you would do a recumbent crescent moon for your
This is what the
second.
water looks like. Yeah, so I'd be imagining kind of a silvery or white moon as I'm applying that to my second chakra. And it's lam vam. Is that it? Lam vam. Yeah, so I'd be vam 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 and thinking about. So it's basically I'm trying to get my body to vibrate. One of the things that you said in the very first chapter is that your inner and outer like fingerprint is maintained until a stronger impulse displaces it. So by tracing the silver moon and the orange square around it, and putting the scent that relates to these things and thinking about the shape, the sound, the essence that actually I'm actually trying to overwhelm it to like see this is a different way of vibrating aside from what you're doing, body.
Right.
This is okay, so that's the whole idea. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely perfect.
Okay, so that's what vibrational healing is basically using your book. And what I like about your book is there's not so we've spent a lot of time with the elements and doshas as a way of figuring out what the right essential oils are. And in your book, you have a lovely set of like, okay, if you're having this issue with your doshas, if you have this, so you actually have an organization, kind of a methodology related to that. But then you also, in the very beginning, talk about divine archetypes. So tell me a little bit about, and there's a whole bunch of divine archetypes. The one that related that I kind of intuitively was pulled to was Weeping Willow Dryad and then Snake. Okay,
Mhm.
so let's pick snake. What does that mean? What's that archetype of snake and what does it mean?
Oh, did you have that open? Will you go ahead and just read that?
Yeah, so here's what I have down is that the catalyst for snake is authentic growth, growth through cycles, using potions to heal, transmutation, kundalini. So in your book, you would have a kind of very quick description of what the kind of maybe the intentionality or the vibration of that archetype is. And
Mhm.
then you said it would resonate with betel leaf?
Yeah, betel leaf.
Okay. And then lemon.
Mhm.
So these are the two, like, if you're like, okay, if you resonate with, if you're reading this paragraph and you go, this is exactly what I need, then you would use betel leaf and lemon and to bring that the archetype of the snake, which then you describe in the book. Snake's energy is that of old knowledge and ancient wisdom of matter becoming conscious. It's associated with the dynamic experience of radical awakenings and shifts in awareness that push us over a threshold, requiring us to never go back to an old way of being, which resonated with me because of the thing that we talked about. So here I have like an archetype that I really like. I know I saw orange. I know that I have some type of patchouli, red pepper or something or other going on. And here's now another thing of betel leaf and lemon. How would I work with this archetype in using this vibrational energies and the healing using the scent?
What snake does is help us basically awaken to our own deepest wisdom. It's going to be unique to everybody. So your latent information that you were born with. And as you become aware of that, you can start to facilitate it and work with it in the world. It's a super complex archetype. So I would anoint yourself, smell it, read it, honestly lay down in quiet contemplation, for 15 to 20 minutes afterwards and see what kind of awakens with you conscious. And what happens is, depending on how we were incarnated, again, we're going to have a propensity towards different energy. Like I do really well with, I like the dark goddess. Where is my best friend? She's all, like Kuan Yin all the time with, the full moon, so they're both really beautiful. What it is once you find what story you're fascinated with, it means that part of you, for whatever reason, is going to release something beautiful.
So what this is reminding me of is my husband has in his practice, it's a Buddhist practice, and it's called exemplar practice. And the idea is that you take a deity, which is a deity or a goddess or a god or a concept, is like you said in your book, is like imbued with a bunch of energy because collectively we've thought about, Jesus, or we've thought about Kuan Yin or the dark goddess or moon goddess, you said. There's energy that's surrounding that. So when we, in the shamanic terms, they would talk about merge with those energies and we become one with it to the point that it's part of us. And we imagine that we are taking on all the characteristics of that archetype. What I'm hearing you say is when you do that, so if I were to completely embody and merge with the snake, then I would be taking on all the different aspects of the snake, and all the mythical stories of the snake, and that would, I could embody a sense of, true desire for authentic growth and, healing and transmutation and all those things that are part of snake. So what I'm hearing you say is that that's something that we would do, is we would use the combination of almond oil, betel, and lemon to apply that during our practices. It could be that we actually spray it on a picture that we have of a snake, or I would spray it on my Kundalini master, or a photo that I have, or whenever I meditate, or whatever. It's basically including that scent in my practice. And I'm thinking, and I'm hearing like embodied, and during that 15 minutes of repose, after smelling that scent, lying down and just really kind of merging with the spirit or the energy of snake or Kuan Yin or whatever you choose in this book. Okay, so I have several different methods. I could use the archetypes, or I could actually use the chakras and the dosha, but I actually have different methodologies that I could use depending on how I feel. And how do you decide which ones to use yourself?
Honestly, I'm a woman of whimsy. Whatever comes to mind, because they're all equally as important. I always view it as like a palette or a toolbox. So whatever I feel strong with, like for example, I don't work with right now. My current book I'm writing is actually a cookbook, but it's on the vibrational properties of food. So whereas snake served me when I wrote the book we're talking about, is because this book is, in a nutshell, is basically archaic knowledge kind of made simple, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why that the betel leaf vibrates to archaic knowledge, and the lemon is me understanding it to the point where I can verbalize it and put forward a methodology that I feel is clean and simplistic. So you don't have to go rooting around and digging, and to figure this out. So that's why that was such a, you intuitively found one of my primary archetypes that I used when I wrote this. But whereas now I much more am working with, honestly, archetypes of the fairy, things that come from the green mantle, because I'm writing about how, consuming food, helps to create our body, but it has a much more levity to it. It doesn't have that ancient deepness to it. It has that this book is, whereas my new one, it makes more sense that I would have an archetype that would help me understand, the celebratory aspects of the plant kingdom, which I happen to look at through fruits and vegetables. And so you can see where those are both, great archetypes. It just has to do with your to-do list, basically.
Right, kind of what intuitively you're drawn to. So let's get down to kind of some basics now. So let's say I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some patchouli, I'm going to get some betel, I'm going to get some lemon. Where do I go get this? Can I buy it on Amazon? How do I know when I'm buying that it's like pure essential oil? Because as I heard you say, like, it's going to affect the scent and probably the quality and the vibrational quality of it. So is there a good source that you use, or can you just use it any place? Does it matter?
Well, of course, because this is what I do for a living, I would love it if you would get your oils from me. So
you have, okay, perfect. So you have oils on your website. And what's your website URL?
It's divinearchetypes.org. And since that's a weird word, I'm going to spell it out.
Okay.
divinearchetypes.com.
Okay.
And absolutely everything I write in this book, I have all those oils because obviously to write about something, you have to work with something. So I've been a certified aromatherapist for almost 12 years now. So this has been, my primary passion and work for a long time. So I spend a lot of time sourcing oils from all over the world. So obviously I love them like they were my children. But other than that, just read labels. It needs to be, 100% pure.
When I go to your website, can I buy pre-mixed things, or I have to buy the essential oils and mix it at home?
Oh, no, I offer both. So I offer basically beautiful blends for all of the 5 elements, beautiful blends for all of the chakras. And then I have dosha bath salts. And then I have a Ganesha archetype anointing oil. And then
Excellent. Thank you so much. I've learned a ton. And we talked about we only talked about a portion of your book. And because as we talked it with, you said yourself, it's a reference book. So we've been talking to Candice Covington about her book, Essential Oils in Spiritual Practice, working with the chakras, divine archetypes, and the 5 great elements. Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Oh, I've enjoyed myself. You are a complete delight. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.